Good morning. I want to welcome everyone to today's committee hearing. I'm joined by Council President Eric Garcetti and Jan Perry. We have a quorum, so we can get started. We have several items on the agenda today. I believe that we will discuss 3 of them. The rest, I believe members could be moved on consent. So with that said, I'm going to ask the clerk to, Ms. Barclay to begin reading the items, starting out with item 3.
Good morning, Meg Barclay with the CLA. Item 3 is a report from the CLA and the city attorney, an ordinance and a resolution to establish community taxing district and various other actions related to parking occupancy tax remittance requirements.
Okay, without objection, we will adopt the CLA report on that item. Ms. Barclay, are we being tested today? We have a very high-ranking member of the CLA's office here and generally doesn't grace us with his presence. Have we done something wrong, or have you done something wrong?
Just make me look good.
Okay. Item 4.
Item 4 are reports from the CRA and the CLA relative to an owner participation agreement with JSM Florentine.
Okay, without objections, we'll adopt the CLA report. And items 5A through G.
Items 5A through G are tax allocation bonds in the amount of $35 million for the Wilshire Center Koreatown redevelopment project area, $16.5 million for the North Hollywood redevelopment project area, $47.5 million for the Hollywood redevelopment project area, $14.5 million for the Mid-City Recovery, Pico Union 2, and the Vermont Manchester redevelopment project areas, $14.5 million for the Mid-City Recovery, Pico Union 2. Oh, that looks like the same item. Excuse me. $22 million for the East Hollywood, Beverly, Normandy Earthquake Disaster Assistance and the Westlake redevelopment project area, and $22 million for the East Hollywood and Westlake redevelopment project area.
Okay, then we'll adopt the CAO report on that item. Item 6.
Item 6 are reports from the CRA and the CLA relative to the master plan study for the Reseda area of the Reseda Canoga Park Earthquake Recovery Project area.
Okay, then on that item, we'll adopt the CLA report. Item 7.
Item 7 are reports from the CRA and the CLA relative to pre-development and construction permanent loan agreement with 3555 Whittier Partners in the amount of $2 million.
Okay, then on that item, we'll adopt the CLA report.
Item 8 are reports from the CRA and the CLA relative to geotechnical engineering services contracts.
Okay, then without objection, we'll adopt the CLA report. Item 9.
Item 9 are reports from the CRA and the CAO relative to tax-exempt multifamily housing bonds in the amount of $13.5 million for the Hollywood Bungalow Court Apartments.
Okay, then on this item, we'll adopt the CAO report. Item 10.
Sure. Excuse me. Item 10 is a report from the CRA relative to the status of CRA investments as of December 31st, 2007.
Okay, I just received a card on item 10, so we'll hold that item. Let's move to item 11.
Item 11 are reports from the CRA and the CAO relative to insurance broker of record services, contract for AON Risk Services of Southern California.
Okay, then on that item, item 11, we'll adopt the CAO report. Item 12.
Item 12 are reports from the CRA and the CLA relative to the purchase of an easement at Adams Central Mixed Use Project.
Okay, then on this item, we'll adopt the CLA report with the technical amendments. That should bring us to item 13.
Item 13 are reports from the LAHD and the CAO relative to an RFP for long-term loan service contracts and the extension of the existing contract.
And on item 13, we'll adopt the CAO report. Item 14.
Item 14 are reports from the LAHD and the CAO relative to moderate income first-time homebuyer forward commitment program awards.
Okay, then we'll adopt the CAO report on that item. Item 14. That brings us to item 15.
Item 15 are reports from the LAHD and the CAO relative to TEFRA minutes for the Bonnie Bray Village Apartments, Broadway Apartments, and 3 Courtyard projects.
On that item, we'll adopt the CAO report. Item 16.
Item 16 are reports from the CDD and the CAO relative to tax-exempt certificates of participation in the amount of $3.5 million for the benefit of Cathedral High School.
Okay, then we'll adopt the CAO report on item 16. That brings us to item 17.
Item 17 are reports from the CDD and the CAO relative to tax-exempt certificates of participation in an amount of $3.75 million for the benefit of the Asian American Drug Abuse Program.
Okay, great. We'll adopt the CAO report on that. That brings us back to item 10. I have a card from Mr. Arnold Sachs. Arnold Sachs. Going once. Good morning, Mr. Sachs.
Good morning.
Somebody got a haircut?
Somebody got a haircut. Got a bigger head, actually, not a haircut.
It wasn't? It's not?
I got a bigger head.
Okay, go on.
It's all depends on how you look at it. See,
Go on.
a political answer there. Thank you. Good morning. I just wanted to talk about this one real quick because I've been listening to the other items. Unfortunately, I didn't get here in time to put in my card on number 5, which I wanted to talk about. But it seems again that most of the items that I've heard you listed in past have had dual reports, one from the CAO and one from the CRA, and you've accepted the CLL or the CAO's report, not the CRA's report. So on this item number 10, is the CRA report on the CRA. And I'm just curious to know if you'll accept the CRA report on this item. And if you accept it, then why is it necessary on the preceding items that went through the agenda to have 2 reports, whereas this one only has 1 report? And again, if you accept the report on this item, why not accept it on the other items? Thank you for your time.
What I'm going to do, Mr. Sachs, Andrew, explain this to Mr. Sachs, and then he'll come up with some other things to ask. Okay, but that's okay. Okay, so on item 10, we'll receive and file the CRA report. I'm going to quickly take public comment. Chuck Tennant, and then we'll get into the other items. Chuck, are you ready, or you want to wait? Why don't you wait? Take your time. I'll get you.
Okay.
I'll get you. Let's go to item 1. If you could read item 1, Ms. Barclay, please.
Item 1 is a communication from the mayor relative to the appointment of Mr. David Damian Figueroa to the Los Angeles Homeless Services Authority for the term ending June 30th, 2011.
Okay, Mr. Figueroa, please come forward.
Is he here? I guess he's not here.
Okay, let's hold item 1, and we'll go to item, could you read item 2, Ms. Barclay?
Yes, sir. Item 2 is a communication from the mayor relative to the appointment of Mr. Dave Sickler to the Community Redevelopment Agency Board of Commissioners for the term ending November 4th, 2011.
I see Dave. Please come forward. Good morning.
Good morning.
And I must say, before you start, I had an opportunity to spend some quality time with Dave last week discussing this appointment. I'm very excited about this appointment, your commitment, and looking forward to working with you. It seems like we have so much in common where it relates to trying to afford individuals not a handout but a hand up. So with that said, please state your case.
Well, thank you very much, Councilman Wesson, and the rest of the committee. Good morning. I really feel honored and privileged to be nominated for this particular board because I've lived downtown Los Angeles for almost 22 years. So, as they say, I think I have a lot of skin in the game and very concerned about not only good growth and green growth, but job opportunities for our young people in these communities. And I know, based on my time here with the Board of Public Works and working with the various council districts, that no 2 council districts are exactly alike, and So there's no particular square peg that can fit the needs of every single district. And so I really look forward to working with the council and the individual council people on fitting whatever kinds of service that the CRA can deliver. I'm excited about this growth period we're in. Because I've spent so much time in Los Angeles, I've seen growth spurts. And it's been my own observation from the past that we have not taken full opportunity to develop good jobs and job opportunities. And I think it's even more critical now because so many of our jobs that pay well are outsourced, and we've got young people, I feel, that can get a hand up, as Councilman Wesson says, into some of these building trades jobs that afford portable careers, portable health care, portable pensions. And so I think the CRA is and should be the heart and conscience of development in the city, and I hope to play that role.
Well, like I said, Mr. President and Ms. Perry, we spent a quality 45 minutes to an hour. I have absolutely no questions whatsoever. I think that...
I do not either. I know
point.
Mr. Sickler very well, and I'm very pleased with the nomination.
Yeah.
Ms. Perry?
Yeah, motion to approve it.
Okay, then without objection, we will recommend your appointment to the full council, and I believe that's at 10 o'clock this morning.
Thank you.
Okay.
We'll have some tough questions for you there. So
Okay.
that's good.
I hate rejection.
Yeah, no, don't worry. You'll be okay.
We'll put Council Member Zine on it. Okay.
And LaVonza Rosendahl.
You
pressed the
got
buttons
it.
already.
Yeah. Oh, that's good. Mr. Tennant, are you ready?
I'm ready.
Why don't you come forward? And good morning, Chuck.
Good morning, Herb and Eric and
Morning.
Ken and committee members. Knowing is not enough, we must apply. Willing is not enough, we must do. City laws are not enough, they need to be enforced, and we need commitments and be educated by rights and clarification of entitlements. And people have the right to participate in the decision-making process. Unfortunately, journalism does not get the meaning of rights, but our city lawmakers should to uphold and protect our rights. It's dangerous to undermine the future of housing in the city, and the significant reduction in affordable housing is dangerous. Developers do not have people's interests at heart because they serve other masters. Taxpayers are the stakeholders in this city, not just the developers. They keep poverty while they reap in millions at the city's expense. Maybe we need a Bill of Rights. And Herb and Eric, please schedule a discussion on TOPA and the community land trust that could be combined. You're leaders in this city. You move things forward. You get things done. Two quick things, items. The MPLA of 1999, we need to minimize that. Look at the central coast of, I only got 1 minute. Okay, central coast of California, a loss of $280 million, and it's coming down here very soon. And you know, one thing I saw last Thursday at the ASCAP meeting and I Create Music Expo, City of Los Angeles gave them a proclamation. They generate $863 million in 2007. They were given that by the City of LA, and they made an announcement. Gee, the mayor had something else to do. Yet none of his office people or the city council or anyone came from this city to show up at an event like that. It was really sad.
Okay,
And
wrap it up.
one last thing. Each day, thousands of refrigerators are given out for free by the DWP, and then each person's given about $100 in recycling. I asked the DWP, where does all this hundreds of thousands of dollars of money go? No answer. Could it be used for housing? Yes. Thank you.
Now, that was a hell of a segue, Chuck. You went from, you did a 360. Good to see you.
Good to see you.
Did Mr. Figueroa, is he present? Item number 1. So, Ms. Barclay, let's just hold that for a while in the event that he does come. So that brings us to item 18. So if you could read item 18.
Item 18 are reports from the LHD and the CLA relative to the proposed residential hotel unit conversion and demolition ordinance.
Yeah, but this one's going to go on for a long time.
Okay, Ms. Barclay, we're going to take item 18 and hold it in limbo for 30 seconds. Mr. Figueroa. You are lucky that I just became a new grandfather for the first time 2 weeks ago, and I'm in a good mood because this next item is going to take a while, and you would have had to wait. So can we reread item number 1 and dispense of it so we can get to the very important business of item 18?
Item 1 is communication from the mayor relative to the appointment of Mr. David Damian Figueroa for the Los Angeles Homeless Services Authority.
Welcome, and tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, my name is, again, David Damian Figueroa. I am 18 years here in Los Angeles County. I first came to Los Angeles in 1989. I am the Associate State Director for AARP California, where I oversee close to 1 million members, 50 plus. And we work on 50 plus issues, advocacy, volunteer engagement, membership engagement. And I also am an editor for AARP Segunda Juventud, which is the largest bilingual publication in the country. We've taken our membership in at AARP from 201,000 Latinos to 1.4 million in 6 years. And we're very proud of that achievement. And I'm also in charge of diversity here in Los Angeles County with respects to volunteer engagement.
Okay, Mr. Perry?
Yeah, I know. Thank you for telling us about your AARP experiences. And since you'll be going on to, I believe it's LASA.
Yes.
I don't know if you're familiar with the most recent report put out by Beyond Shelter on the fastest growing segment of our homeless population, our senior citizens. And so I wonder if you've given any thought to that and your connections with AARP and how you might be able to assist in aiding that population through your LASA work and through your day job.
Yes. The 50-plus population, homeless population, is growing significantly. As we pretty much all know, it has to do with the fact that of course, the economy and the housing crisis. And that is something that's very, very important to me. I think that there's so many folks that are isolated. On top of that, they are faced with serious issues of trying to live on a fixed income, and more people are going out, either trying to live with family members and friends, and ultimately end up on the street. It's something that's very important to us. My interest in the Los Angeles homeless population started with our CEO who came to Los Angeles, Bill Novelli, and we met with the mayor, and we started discussing what we could possibly do as an organization, being that we are over 41 million members strong, not only here in Los Angeles, but possibly doing something across the country.
Okay, I think what I'll do after your approval is make some arrangements and take you down to one of the largest homeless shelters we have in the city in my district, and let you get a feeling of what's going on, who's in there, and see it firsthand, and see if there's some way we can work together closely to focus on senior citizens.
I would appreciate that very much, because I also feel that the homeless population is going to be increasing, and I think the only way that we can really resolve or put a dent into this crisis is through volunteer engagement. I think that when we start to care for one another and really look at what we can do for our fellow citizen, fellow human beings, that we that's the only way this is really going to be resolved.
Mr. President, you have a question?
Just very briefly, on the other end of the spectrum, Ms. Perry, in our ad hoc homeless committee, has also put the focus on homeless youth, and wondering if you have any ideas in Hollywood, the area I represent. We have a disproportionate number of emancipated youth that come out of the foster care system. As we know, the high percentage of foster care youth that do wind up on the streets. Is there any ideas or focus you'd like to have on homeless youth and what we could be doing better?
Well, I think that number one is to create awareness. I think that I've had conversations with various advisors, mentors, if you will. And I really feel that the homeless situation the crisis is getting larger and larger, more significant because of the lack of awareness. I think there's a lot of awareness being put on, which is very, very important, on issues abroad. I really feel that we need to take care of home, and I think one thing that we could do as an organization, ARP, and as an individual, is we have a very large boomer population. We have a lot of folks that are really feeling that boomers that want to leave a legacy. Our research shows that. They want to leave the earth knowing that they meant something, and I think that that we could get them involved in this issue, especially when it comes to youth.
Okay, is that it, Mr. President? Then, without objection, we will recommend to the full council today at 10 that we support your nomination. Thank you for coming.
Thank you very much, and I would like to congratulate you on you becoming a grandfather, and I want to apologize for being late this morning.
Is his membership paid up?
No, wait. I was going to tell Miss Perry yesterday. I just told Andrew. See, there's perks to growing old gracefully. I had my first meal with a senior discount.
Good stuff.
And I ain't ashamed. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Oh, gee.
You better hope you live to walk around the block as many times as I have. Okay, let's go back to item 18. Ms. Barclay, if you could please take the stand.
Stand, huh?
The stand. We're a court now. We're a court.
Administer the oath.
Yeah, kneel, administer the oath. Good morning, Ms. Barclay.
Good morning, Mr. Wesson. Good morning, Meg Barclay with the CLA's office. Before you are reports from the Housing Department and my office relative to a proposed residential hotel unit conversion and demolition ordinance. This ordinance was first before the committee on March 26, 2008. At that time, the committee raised several questions or concerns, requested our office to report with amendments to address these questions. Our report includes an amended ordinance as attachment A that has various changes, including some adjustments to provisions relative to in lieu fees collected relative to fees collected in lieu of replacement unit construction. Also, a more specific definition of the level of affordability necessary to qualify for an exemption from the ordinance. An additional condition of clearance to allow relative to larger hotels of more than 250 units, and an exemption and also a requirement that occupants of residential hotel units be notified of the outcome of LAHD's review of applications for clearance relative to these hotels. Also, an additional exemption for buildings that have consisted entirely of residential units offered for rents for periods of no less than 30 days since October 11th, 1995, and modifications to allow replacement units to be constructed within a 2-mile radius, and an additional modification to provide a process to appeal to council in cases where a reduction of units of greater than 25% is approved by the Housing Department. In addition, we request that the city attorney and the LAHD work together as this ordinance is finalized for council to include a clause relative to the urgency of the ordinance to ensure that it goes into effect prior to expiration of the existing ICO on May 24th.
Okay, we've just been joined by my friend and the wingman of this committee, Ed Reyes. Ms. Perry,
Yeah.
This is what I think we're going to do. We have a lot of cards from the public. We should afford them. I mean, I don't think we have enough time to give everybody 2 minutes. We'll give everybody 1 minute. After that, I think I'll turn it over to you to lead the questioning, if that's fine. Okay, thank you. Tracy, you're first. Bilal Ali and Al Sabo. It's good to see you again.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to see you as well. Tracy Shavira, Central City Association. We understand that the purpose of this ordinance is to protect a very specific housing stock that serves a unique and vulnerable segment of our community. However, we must be wary not to cast our net too broadly and capture properties that are not SROs in the truest sense. Therefore, we are delighted to support the city's decision to narrow the definition of a residential hotel and exclude those buildings that do contain smaller units as part of their overall apartment mix, but operate exclusively as apartments with 30-day month-to-month leases. We would also like to respectfully request an amendment to Section 47.83 of this ordinance, which lays out the appeal process. As the ordinance is currently written, LEHD identifies the residential hotels that are subject to the ordinance and also hears the appeals from property owners who contest the residential hotel use. We are extremely concerned that the same body will be hearing the appeal. We believe that more objectivity is needed.
Wrap up last sentence.
We believe that more objectivity is needed, and maybe a board of review setup would be more appropriate. Thank you.
Thank you, thank you. I think it was Mr. Ali.
Yes, I just wanted to
Morning.
inform you, Councilman, that you can get senior citizen discounts at Denny's and IHOP. You don't have to be as old as you are.
That's where I was. No, I mean, it's 50. Don't you know? I mean, the new thing is 50 and fly.
Yeah.
Okay? So I am 50 and fly.
Next time it's on me.
All right. Go ahead.
I'm here this morning to urge this committee to come up with a strong residential hotel ordinance and to amend the present draft. There's several loopholes in there that doesn't protect extremely low-income units. I personally live in a residential hotel. I lived there as a result of being a victim of a violent crime 2 years ago, which almost lost my life. I had very few options except this residential hotel where I'm living. Under the present draft, my owner, which we're not protected under this blanket exemption, my owner could raise my rent twice as much as I'm paying for rehab projects. And I don't doubt he would do that because my owner is also the author of Proposition 98 that would eliminate rent control. So speaking to further my fellow tenants in the building, showing them the draft, going over the draft with them, they're also expressing the same concerns that I'm expressing. Most of the tenants in that building are in there on vouchers or on Social Security or some other kind of endowment, and they come under the 25% area median income. So without these further protections in this draft ordinance, these folks will be at risk of losing their housing. Thank you.
Well, look, thank you for coming. I'm glad that you survived the attack because you appear to be a very good man.
Oh, thank you.
My name is Al Sabo, and I live in the Roslyn Hotel in the 9th District of the city. I've been living in the 9th District for the past 5 years, ever since I became disabled, now on a fixed income. Without this housing ordinance, people like me would be forced to the streets. And once you're on the street, the Safer Cities Initiative would soon move me to jail. I wouldn't even pass go and collect $200. I support this ordinance only if it truly protects me. You're talking about it in the way it's written right now that only 10% of the units would be put out there for low-income people. Well, that would mean about 80% of the current units would be forced to the street because they wouldn't have any place else to go. The other thing that bothers me about this is making a special exemption for the larger hotels, such as the one I live in, the Roslyn, the Haywood, the Cecil, and the Ford. And this is wrong simply because I feel that I need the same protection as all the other hotel tenants. In fact, it should be given to all the hotel tenants that currently reside there. Otherwise, we have no place else to go. Most of us are on fixed income, and we do need your help, and we'd certainly appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Now, we do have order in this committee, and we do have a rule. When you give applause, you have to make sure that the chair gets the largest. I want to call up, and I hope I'm pronouncing the last name correctly, and if I am, I'm sure that you were teased as a child. Curtis Killings. Verminta and Vachelle McFarland. I think it's a Vachelle. Please, come on, sir. Wait, is this Verminta? Vermetra. State your...
Oh, hi, my name is Curtis Killings. I reside in...
So I was right.
Excuse
I
me?
pronounced it right.
Mr. Curtis Killings.
Yeah, I got it.
Get this a little closer. Hi, my name is Mr. Curtis Killings. Don't take that last name, you know.
No, that's what I was just...
Yeah, right. Don't go there with it, okay, please. I
See,
reside...
I had security right behind you, right?
Yeah, that's why I'm putting my head
Two
over
of them.
there, you know.
Now,
I ain't worried
Curtis
about that.
going, give Start his time all over again.
He couldn't catch the guy that shot me in the head, so I'm not worried about him. He can't catch me. I'm not doing anything, you know. Yeah.
Boy, between you and Ali, I tell you, I've had... So go on, Mr. Killings.
No, actually, that's a true statement. What I just said, I became disabled. I am a professional. I'm a chemical refinery, skilled at chemicals and chemistry and oil refining, and I'm a disabled truck driver also. And my disability came from what I just made a remark about. I was shot in the head by someone who the LAPD failed to even attempt to capture. That put me in my disability at this state right now. Okay, and I've been struggling very hard to survive in this physical situation that I am, considering the state of housing in Los Angeles. The representatives that I and people that like me that have voted for and elected, they were telling us that they were going to support us, that they were going to represent us, they were going to try to house us. But I didn't know that the housing they were talking about was jail housing. I didn't know that was the housing they were talking about. I thought it was housing where we could survive and live a life that was promised to us in the Constitution and the Declaration of Independence. I thought that was the type of life they were speaking of. That's the kind of life that me and people like me are looking for, that we're striving for. We are all not degenerates. We are all not people who just be brushed aside and looked over and just brushed away just like we don't exist. We are Americans, and I'm proud to be an American, but I'm ashamed, or I'm getting to be ashamed to be an Angelino, because I am being forgotten in Los Angeles.
Thank you, Mr. Killing.
My name is Vermitra Bogany. I like to state that
I didn't even come close, so I apologize on your name.
Oh, that's okay. I like to state that I did stay in the Huntington Hotel for about 3 years with my 2 children. And I need to state that if it was not for the hotels, I probably would not have had anywhere to stay with my children. That, as far as for affordable housing, it needs to be more affordable housing in the city of Los Angeles for women and children. The second thing that I like to state, because of the income and everything that I paid right there, it was really hard for me, but I did work myself up. I now work for Bank of America. I work there so I can afford to do better for me and my kids. But what I'm stating is, as far as the hotels, I don't know what I would have done had I not been able to stay, in a hotel and pay that part of my income. And I was not able to get no kind of Section 8, none of that.
Thank you.
Thank
And
you.
Congratulations on your new job. Ms. McFarland. Okay, Curtis, I believe you.
Yeah.
I believe you. Now, if there's a Miss McFarland, is it Fabiola Sandoval and Steve Diaz? Thank you two for coming.
You're welcome.
Who goes first?
Ms. Sandoval?
Hi, good morning. I'm Fabiola Sandoval, and I'm with Esperanza Community Housing Corporation. I'm sure you're all familiar with the organization, south of downtown LA. It's been in the business of building and preserving affordable housing for the past 18 years. Excuse me. Well, we're here as allies to the downtown extremely low-income community. And we've been active supporters of the organizations working to protect residential hotels. And I think we can't say anything more powerful than those folks that have come here before us to speak of their own personal experiences. I mean, we're here as allies and definitely here to try and punch forward as much as we can that extremely low-income people are protected through the residential hotel ordinance. So we're here to urge council members to support the changes requested and to move the ordinance forward. Finally, Sister Diane, I'm sure you all remember her, she used to say that extremely low-income people are always overlooked in the affordable housing industry. And this is now, we have a real opportunity to protect extremely low-income tenants through the passing of the residential hotel ordinance.
Thank you. Mr. Diaz.
Good morning. I would like to first start off by asking everyone that's here in support of the residential hotel ordinance to please stand. Good morning, Housing Committee. I am Steve Diaz with the Los Angeles Community Action Network. I have lived and organized in residential hotels for the past 6 years. We believe that the CLA's recommendations move us closer to the goal of protecting extremely low-income tenants and the residential hotel units. But we're asking for 3 key changes in the recommendations. First, there should be no section for large hotels that create different standards, including allowing market rate conversions. Large hotels are opportunities to preserve more housing, not less. Allowing market rate conversions is completely opposite to the goals of this ordinance. Second, there should be no exemption for buildings with long-term tenancy. This does not have anything to do with the legal definition of residential hotels. We must preserve every residential hotel unit we have. Last, we must increase the recommended set-aside for extremely low-income people. 10% is simply not enough when the majority of tenants are very poor. Our coalition believes that 30% set-aside is reasonable, and we have many examples of buildings that have been financed at this levels. We urge you to pass this ordinance with the recommendations that we're proposing. Thank you.
Thank you for coming, Mr. Diaz. And Ms. Sandoval. Barbara Schultz and Reverend Liz Munoz. Barbara, good morning. Good morning. You're first, and Reverend, you're on deck.
Good morning. Barbara Schultz, Legal Aid Foundation of Los Angeles. I'm the attorney for plaintiffs in the Wiggins case. The City Council signed the Wiggins or approved the Wiggins settlement agreement in August of 2006. That settlement agreement has a replacement obligation for residential hotels downtown that requires most replacement at 35% median income. The CRA is on the hook for any replacement obligations not passed on to the owners. There's a particular conflict with the new CLA draft in terms of the large hotel section. The large hotels are covered by Wiggins. If you allow the owners to renovate at these new affordability levels, you are asking the public to write a huge check for the city's replacement obligations. Looking at the inventory that I just passed out, the chart, there's about 1,700 units in large hotels that aren't covenanted and that have a replacement obligation at 35% median income or lower. That means if an owner converted according to the CLA chart, the CRA would have to replace about 50% of those units, or over 750 units. At about $300,000 a pop, that's over $200 million in public funds. And now the CLA has even taken the in lieu fee away from the CRA to do that. The exemption makes no fiscal sense and should not be included in the ordinance.
Thank you. Thank you. Reverend, good morning.
Good morning. Wow, you're giving a preacher a minute to speak? That will be a miracle.
Preacher or politician?
Amen, brother.
Or lawyer.
Or lawyer. Amen, brother. My name is Reverend Liz Munoz. I'm the rector of Trinity Episcopal Church in Council 13, Eric Garcetti's. And my congregation is also a member of LA Voice. I'm here to support a strong residential hotel ordinance that will preserve affordable housing for all people here, in part because I'm actually a native Los Angelian. I love this city very much. In my previous life, I was an elementary school teacher with LAUSD, and many of my students, I taught in the Pico Union area, were often calling these residential hotels their home. The other reason I'm doing this here today is because I am a person of faith, and I follow this little preacher from this podunk town out in Galilee who was himself homeless, as he constantly reminded his disciples and us. And so I don't have any more explaining to do at the pearly gates when I get there. I am here to support the kind of ordinance where more people will be able to have, rather than less people, availability to these residential hotels. I'm grateful for all the work.
Take your time.
Oh, thank you.
I may need you to pray for me once. You just go on.
Likewise. I'm here to thank you all for your hard work in trying to preserve these residential hotels and for a strong ordinance. However, the exemption for affordable housing of 60% AMI would still, in effect, leave those who currently live in these residential hotels homeless, since the average is 30% AMI. So I know you answer to voters. I answer to a higher power. So I'm here in support of God's children.
Thank you for coming. It's a pleasure to meet you. Bob McCall, Bill Przlowski? Mr. McCall, good morning.
Good morning. I am Robert McCall, Bob McCall. I have lived at the Hayward Hotel for the past 7 years. I'm currently retired and receiving Social Security benefits. All my life have worked in the social service field, helping people without affordable housing. I would be homeless. I'm here today to support the residential hotel ordinance, which will permanently protect our buildings and people throughout the Los Angeles and throughout the city of Los Angeles. If this ordinance with an exemption for affordable housing, I would, if it was not for the ordinance that passed with an exemption for affordable housing, I would no longer be able to maintain my current housing. We have programs in place to save dogs, cats, whales, types of bugs, and let's have a program in place for that will be for low-income residents and people at risk of becoming homeless. Without this ordinance in place, without an affordable housing exemption, there would be more homeless people and less affordable housing. 10% is not enough in exemption, and I am extremely low income.
Thank you for coming, Mr. McCall. Thank you very much. Anybody here, do we know of Vashelle McFarland or this Bill Przlowski? If so, maybe need to tell them that their chance is slipping away. Paul Zimmerman. Good morning.
Good morning. I'm the director of the Southern California Association of Nonprofit Housing, and I also want to direct your attention to the 30% AMI median set aside under the exception section of this ordinance. 10% is just unconscionably too low. It would be almost an official sanction to dislocate many of the residents in these hotels today and deny this housing to people in the future who need this very affordable housing. I represent a membership of community nonprofit developers that stand ready to develop these buildings with a much more socially responsible set-aside, at least 30%, if not higher, and feel that this is an economically viable proposition to do this, and also really the only ethical course to take. Thank you.
Thank you so much for coming. Maria Varela and Mike Alvidres. And Betsy Handler. Good morning.
Good morning. Good morning and congratulations, Mr. Weston.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
My name is Maria Varela, and I'm a DWAC and LA CAN member. I live at the Hayward Hotel in Council District 14. I have been living there since April 27, 2001. I worked as a homeless advocate for 9 years in the Skid Row area. I am 46 years old, disabled, economically challenged, minority woman. My chances are not good. Without this housing, who knows what would happen to me and my other neighbors that are still living there. Some have already relocated on St. Julian Street or nearby missions and shelters. I support this ordinance, but only if it truly protects me. There is an exemption that would allow our rents to go up to between $700 and $1,000 a month. I can't afford that. If I were forced to move out, I'm not sure where I would go. Can I have your address? I'll camp out in your neighborhood instead because mine is already full. If we're not protected from these kinds of rent increases, we will be on the street. So would almost everyone else is in my building. Residential hotels must be truly protected. We urge the council members on this committee to add the amendments proposed to the community, then support the ordinance in moving forward for the final vote. Also, Garcetti, I do have ideas for homeless
You have
youth.
to wrap it up, or you're going to get me in trouble with everybody else that only
Okay,
gave
well,
a minute
thank you
to.
for the time.
Yeah, I
but
could give a clergy exemption, but just quickly,
I do have ideas, so if I can get some more time to meet with each and every one of you council members, I do have ideas.
thank you.
For the community, for the city of LA. I've been here for 39 years. I'm very aware of it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mike Elvidres has transformed into a very pregnant woman.
Yes.
Here
What did I
Michael,
how did I do that?
It's magic. My father's going to be very happy.
How did I do that?
Good morning,
How did
committee members.
It says Mike.
I know it says Mike, but he could not be here today.
Okay.
So Molly Reisman with Skid Row Housing Trust in Mike's place. I'm here to ask you to increase the set-aside in rehabbed residential hotels for extremely low income individuals to 30% of the total units. The majority of existing tenants in residential hotels are extremely low income. The CLA's report recommends only setting aside 10% of units for extremely low income individuals because a greater set-aside could require rental subsidies to make a project pencil. There are numerous rental subsidy programs available for this purpose. The Section 8 SRO Mod Rehab program was designed specifically for this purpose, and there's not a shortage of that subsidy. In addition, the federal government is currently proposing expanding the Shelter Plus Care program under McKinney-Vento reauthorization. In addition, there are the project-based vouchers available to the city. There is not a lack of rental subsidies. We've been rehabbing residential hotels since 1989. These deals can work. It's economically feasible. I don't understand why the city wouldn't want to pass an ordinance that encouraged developers to take advantage of all these funding programs and that would provide housing for our residents who need it the most.
Thank you. Ms. Handler.
Good morning, and congratulations on your your grandchild. I myself have 5 step-grandchildren.
I'll get there. I'll get there.
My name is Betsy Handler. I am the Director of Legal Services at Inner City Law Center. And of course, we support this ordinance, but only, as Ms. Reisman so eloquently put it, if there is an increase in the set-aside. Excuse me. I want to remind you that this is not only a central city issue. 50% of the SRO housing is outside of the central city. I also want to remind you, as one of the speakers previously brought up, this is not only an adult problem. Increasingly, we see children living in SROs. Inner City recently completed a case with the Legal Aid Foundation of Los Angeles. We had 12 clients in an SRO. 3 of them were children. So you must amend this ordinance and get a strong preservation ordinance.
Thank you for coming. Okay, now we call forward Ron McMullen, Brooke Likens, Monica Martinez. Please come forward. Ron, you're on deck.
My name is Ron.
You're at the plate.
My name is Ron McMullen. I'm the chairman of the Social and Economic Justice Committee at Local 721 of the Service Employees International Union. I've been in that position for several years. Prior to that, I spent 7 years feeding the homeless as a personal project, not for any organization. So I've had a lot of experience in the homeless field. I would just like to say that I'm very concerned. I support development, but development needs to help the people that live in the community. If the development hurts the people that live in the community, then it's bad. I believe that we should preserve 100% of the affordable units. Now, if you're talking about preserving 10%, if you build the building 10 times as high, then that's fine, because you get back as many units as you started with. But if you're going to keep the building the same size, you need to preserve 100%. Thank you.
No, thank you very much. They liked you, Ron. You were high on the clap-o-meter, okay?
My name is Brooke Likens, and I'm with the Downtown Women's Center as well as the Downtown Women's Action Coalition. And I'm here to present some findings from the Coalition's 2007 Downtown Women's Needs Assessment that I think reflect how this ordinance will affect women living in the downtown community and the negative impacts of an exemption for projects up to 80% of AMI. The survey was administered in high-traffic areas throughout Skid Row to 188 women of July 2007. 90% of women surveyed had at least one source of income. Of those, 42% reported receiving general relief, which is at 12% AMI, and 23% reported receiving SSI, which is at 22% of AMI, both numbers very far from 80%. Even with sources of income, housing patterns were largely unstable among women downtown. Most women, 82%, slept in 2 or more places in the past year. Of those, 54% in a hotel, motel, or SRO paid for with their own money. Affordable permanent housing was overwhelmingly identified as both the current community asset and the resource most needed to improve the downtown community. I encourage the council to support this ordinance and advocate for a larger set-aside of units.
Thank you. Thank you for coming. Good morning.
Good morning. My name is Monica Martinez, and I'm Senior Director of Programs at the Downtown Women's Center. I'm here to talk a little bit about the population that we've been serving for over 30 years. The Downtown Women's Center serves the extremely vulnerable and low-income women of downtown Los Angeles. Every year we're visited by over 2,000 women, and of that population, a majority of them are mentally ill, seniors, or physically disabled. These are people who are on a fixed income and will never make more than 30% of AMI. Let's see. We recently did a study in our day center, a survey of 74 women who were visiting our day center, and over 90% of them made less than 30% or less AMI. These are people who are either using SROs now or are looking to find housing and are at risk of homelessness or are currently homeless and depend on the recommended changes to the residential hotel ordinance. With over 18,000 people in the Los Angeles County at risk of losing their homes, it's your responsibility to support them. For over 30 years, the Downtown Women's Center has been advocating for this vulnerable population with the support of the city, and we hope we can depend on your support again. Thank you.
Thank you. Was that a cell phone? If so, let's turn it off, put it on vibrate. That brings Maria Ramos, Jim Reese. Casey Har. Do I have everybody? Okay. Miss Ramos is first.
If you don't mind, Councilman, I'd like to translate for her.
No, we don't mind at all.
Okay. Okay. Buenos días.
Mi nombre es María Ramos, vengo de parte de SAGE.
Good morning. My name is Maria Ramos. I'm here with SAGE.
Yo apoyo esta ordenanza, pero siempre y cuando nos proteja a gente como yo, que hacemos mucho menos del 30%.
I support this ordinance, but only if it supports people like myself that make much less than the 30% AMI.
Porque estamos viendo una crisis de vivienda aquí en Los Ángeles.
Because we're seeing a housing crisis here in Los Angeles.
Estamos viendo mucho desalojo, mucha gente viviendo en las calles.
We're seeing a lot of evictions. We're seeing so many people living in the streets.
Entonces, para mí, la ordenanza, el 10% para mí es muy poco para gente pobre que estamos viviendo aquí en Los Ángeles.
And so for me, 10% preservation is much too low for people like myself who are living here in the city and also on the streets.
O sea que vemos mucha gente pobre que estamos aquí, hemos visto mucha gente viviendo en las calles, durmiendo en las calles, y quisiéramos nosotros como la comunidad que nos apoyaran con el que nos dieran las viviendas el 80 o el 70%.
So there's many poor folks living here. There's a lot of folks that I see living on the streets, and so we'd like for you to preserve 80 or 100% of the housing of the SRO units. Thank you.
Thank you.
And I want to thank you for bringing someone to translate. I'm the only person up here that needed that. So I thank you for being sensitive to me.
Okay.
Jim.
Yes. Good morning, Jim Reese with Craig Lawson and Company. Pleasure speaking before you today. I was here 2 meetings ago, and I had raised some concerns that this ordinance as drafted had the potential to reach out to a lot of units that you did not anticipate. I have seen the exemption put in there today, and I appreciate that, and I appreciate everyone's time and listening to us on this matter. I'd like to push a little farther and ask that this not be an application that we have to file for the exemption on the 30-day, and it just be that if we can provide that up front, that we don't have to go through an application. But overall, I'm supportive of the ordinance. I think it's an important ordinance, and I appreciate that the exemption was included.
Thank you for coming. And you had 22 seconds left. You're a good man, Casey. But you can't have his 22 seconds now.
Before the moratorium went into place in around 2005, there was a period of about 10 years in which there were no protections, and the city lost about 1,700 units. It's no coincidence that the street dwelling population of the Skid Row community is about 1,700 people. The centerpiece of the federal government's initiative to stem homelessness and chronic homelessness is permanent supportive housing, preservation, and prevention. Preservation and prevention are critical, and these 3 things are intertwined. I too support the ordinance, but if and only if there's no exemption for the large hotels, and that you have a set aside of at least 30, if not 40 or 50%, at 30% or lower AMI. It turns out that what's more humane is also more economical. I work at Lamp Community, and of the 600, can I speak a little further? Of the 600 people, more than 600 people that we house, almost half of them rely on privately owned residential units. And these are people that have lived in those units for years. Their health has improved, they've stabilized, they're productive members of the community. These are not apartments of last resort, they are homes. They have been on the streets before that, on average, for a period of 8 years.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Yvonne Michelle Autry, Jose Lizarraga. Ms. Autry, you're first. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you so much for giving us an opportunity to address you on this most important issue. You know, I really don't understand like all the percentages, to tell you the truth, but I know that, you know, we need housing. Okay, this is the bottom line. Housing is a human right. I was born in this country, in this city, 41 years ago, and I don't want to be homeless. Everyone is not rich. You know, $1,000 a month for you might be no problem, but most of us would not be here looking for affordable housing or low-income housing if we could afford that percentage. Okay, we need to have a monthly rate that we can afford so we will not be homeless. We don't want to contribute to that blight, and it's within your power to create that housing. And it should be available at every it should be available at every residential housing unit, not just a few of them, and 10% is not enough. You have to think about the people here. I mean, think outside of yourselves and not maintaining the status quo. Very quickly, you know, I appreciate your honoring my friends on Friday, Ms. Perry, and you've honored some of my friends, but do what you can to help people stay in homes and housing. We don't want to be homeless. You know, we want to make sure that we have the same quality of life or opportunity to improve standard of living as you do and everyone else as we work towards that goal. Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Jose Lizarraga. I was working at the Alexander Hotel for 16 years. In 1 year, I was working with Hammerland before I quit. I saw all kind of right violations from Hammerland, and I got a lot of residents. I got 400 rooms filled up with people with low income, people who was in SSI, people who was in disability. Now, nobody helped us, not even the councilman for the first district when we call him, like employees, like our residents. Every right was violated in that situation. Now, are you going to open the chance for more loose and room for people with low income? That's a question you have to give to us. You represented the people. You represented the poor people too from the Skid Row area. Are you going to take that little piece of play they have, the only affordable units they can pay? Or are you going to turn your face like the councilman did to us? Thank you.
Thank you for coming. Again, let me thank all of you for coming this morning, and also to apologize kind of for not affording you the opportunity to speak longer. But we had a lot of individuals that wanted to speak. Council starts at 10 o'clock. I wanted to be fair, afford everybody a chance to make a statement. So again, I thank all of you for coming. At this point, Ms. Perry, you want to call the...
Yeah, I'd like to ask the Housing Department and CLA to come to the table and walk us through the changes to the ordinance that have taken place from the last meeting. And then after that, if you would allow me to make a few comments.
Of course. Good morning, folks.
Good morning. I'm Mercedes Marquez. I'm the General Manager of the Los Angeles Housing Department. I think before we begin with the actual report backs, it's important to lay the context for this ordinance. At the moment, these thousands and thousands of residential hotel units are almost completely privately held and are vulnerable to being sold, to being demolished, to being converted, and to actually converting completely to the market rate market. This proposal, this ordinance, has a very progressive preservation focus, meaning that its passage will help protect the vast majority of these units as they are now. That was your request, and that is the ordinance that we have drafted for you. Also important to understand, because it is a focus on preservation, the comments that we hear today are about one exemption. And let me talk about that, because it does not reflect what will ultimately happen with these units. The vast majority under the scheme will be preserved as they are. In order to comply with the ordinance and then convert and demolish, these are the things you would have to do. Either you have to pay an in lieu fee on all of the units, right? The in lieu fee, as put forward in the proposal by Councilwoman Perry and then as proposed by the CLA, moves that in lieu fee to the Affordable Housing Trust Fund of the city only for the use of permanent supportive housing. The permanent supportive housing program requires at a minimum that 50% of those units must be set aside as permanent supportive housing units, meaning they're for people at 30% or below of AMI. However, the program does provide project-based Section 8 for all of the units, which means that 100% of the units that we are financing under the permanent supportive housing units fall within the 35% and below range. So those issues are actually met. So what we would like to do is use the in lieu fee, regardless of where it comes from what building, since it will all be in permanent supportive housing. What you are, if you pass this today, what you are doing is supporting a policy in favor of first having conversions under this ordinance go to permanent supportive housing. And we heard Casey Horan talk about permanent supportive housing and preservation. That is exactly what this ordinance does and what the in lieu fee would support. Secondly, you would be able to demolish or convert if you then built comparable units within 2 miles of it, right? So you'd have to put them back. Comparable at this point would mean exactly what is there. So it would be a single room occupancy hotel. Since none of us really want single room occupancy hotels anymore, what would end up happening is coming forward to taking a look at how that works with bathrooms and kitchenettes, right? So that we get the housing stock we want within 2 miles. All right. The third was what we were asked to do, to report back at what do we do for a mixed income approach for these larger buildings. We have worked with financial analysts. We have worked with the very fine staff within the Major Projects Division of LHD, led by Sean Spear. We have compared, and what we come to is that our system of financing for affordable housing within the city takes into account that our funding must coincide with the state allocations that are available for tax credits and any other program that are available to do that. We are a high leverage program, the only way that we have been able to finance now over 6,000 units in the last 4 years, right, with a 4-to-1 leverage. The only way we can afford to do it to get that level. If we hadn't been doing that, we would have only financed somewhere in the area of 1,500 units in the last 4 years. So that is our model. Within that model, we are required to balance the need in the city for family low-income housing, for special needs housing that is not permanent supportive, for public housing replacement as we go through with the modernization of public housing throughout the city, for permanent supportive housing for those neediest among us, and the preservation of over 14,000 units of those buildings that are currently covenanted and will lose their covenants of affordability within the next 5 years. Right? Within that, we tried to do transit-oriented development. We tried to focus in on South Los Angeles, and we try to balance all the needs and make our money go. So this is what we're actually trying to do, and this ordinance must fit within the context of the entire city, of the city's entire affordable housing policy. We believe that we do that. So why have we come back and said for buildings that are 250 units or more, we have a different scheme? There are 7 buildings that meet that that would meet that. There are only 7 buildings that would meet that requirement. After having run the numbers, this is what we came to. That any building below 250 would be able to come back if they chose to come back as, to convert. They could either do the in lieu fee or construct, as everybody would be able to, or we believe they could come back as a 100% affordable building, right? 250 and below could come back. It's difficult, and this gives you the sense of why this is such a pro-preservation ordinance. They would have to come back for 2 rounds of tax credits. It's a difficult legal construct. It certainly can be done. It is not done often in Los Angeles, but it can be supported. They would have to come back and get 2 rounds of trust fund commitments from the state in order to make it work. And what we have said is that we have mirrored what it is that it takes to do an average deal. So what we have said is a floor of 10% at 30% of AMI, only for those that are going to be 100% affordable, right? At the current time, 87% of the residential hotel units are purely residential. the chance that they are going to convert is very small, because we're only allowing them to convert as 100% affordable. So we're taking away the profit, right? We're taking away the profit opportunity there. So they have to come back as 100% affordable. It is not likely that many will. There is nothing in this ordinance that would prevent an affordable housing developer to do this, to come back with more than 10% at 30. There is nothing in the ordinance that would prevent them from coming back to do more. But we have to be honest. And I appreciated that when Skid Row Housing, Molly Reisman came up, she spoke to that. The only way at the moment, right, to get beyond that 10% is if there is an absolute commitment of some other rental subsidy, which is not before us at the moment. If we're talking about capital financing, more than 10% is not possible, right? If you're talking about something else, McKinney-Vento has not been passed, right? So there's nothing at the federal government that comes in yet for shelter plus care. Plus, we have to understand that as we move forward as a city, project-based Section 8 is also going to be pressured as it relates to the replacement of public housing in South Los Angeles. So there are many needs. If you make the decision now to go beyond 10%, you are committing without committing, which is a very dangerous thing in my opinion, okay? Committing project-based vouchers without committing them to reach a higher number. So what we're setting is a floor, not a ceiling, so they can always come back with more. That's very, very important. All right. The other thing we do is we do set a ceiling. We say that not more than 25% in a fully 100% affordable building can come at 60%, right, the 50 to 60%. So we do set a ceiling on the highest level. And that allows them, a developer, building by building, to play with those percentages. That may be one way that they can push it above 10% at the lower level, because when you work at the numbers, you play with it. We have allowed an ordinance, because it's a citywide ordinance, and it has to be both simple and flexible, as we spoke, to allow a mix as you look at the buildings. What does the building give you? What can it do? As it relates to Wiggins, that will also allow building by building to take a look, and the CRA to negotiate with a developer as it relates to those percentages. Also, as I said, since we would want to commit 100% of the in lieu fee that goes to permanent supportive housing to units that are 35% and below, in essence, all of that in lieu fee would go directly to those buildings, as long as we understand that they would have to be permanent supportive housing units, because that would be the policy decision that you would ought to be making. All right. As it relates to the 7 buildings that qualify at 250 and above. Why did we do that? Because we ran the numbers not once, not twice, not even 3 times. We worked with outside consultants. We've looked at performers of all kinds, including performers for some of those actual buildings. What could they become? And our determination is that, that what we would like to do, what works financially, to keep them in that market. And I'm also concerned about legal requirements, because at some point you cannot have a taking. We have to allow enough flexibility, even in a pro-preservation ordinance, to allow it to move and meet the state Supreme Court's mandates on that. So where we are is on those 7 buildings, this is what we would want. 80% of those units would have to remain affordable. 80% of those units would have to remain affordable. They would have a mix, again, of a minimum of 10% would be at 30% of AMI. 40% of the units would have to be below 40% of AMI, and 30% would have to be below 50. So we don't allow any of them even to rise to 60%. In order to compensate for that gap that is created, we're allowing 20% of them to float to market so they can pay for the lower income residents. It is the only way in a building of that level to do that. And again, this is the extreme margin, right? We don't believe that there will be, and anything from 250 and below, many that will actually convert, given the scope of this ordinance and its policy push. But for those above, it allows that while preserving 80% of the units that are actually constructed. So we have, I believe, we have one of the most progressive ordinances overall that the city has ever done, that fits completely as one of the cornerstones of a full citywide affordable housing policy, understanding all of the needs and all of the requirements that we all struggle to meet, and gives a very clear direction for what it is the city would like to do, which is for them to be preserved, and if changing to an affordable building, that we set a floor, not a ceiling, on what that could be. It provides simplicity and flexibility and a way for any prospective owner to understand what their requirements would have to be before they undertook the purchase and then came forward and asked for all kinds of exemptions because they didn't understand. We think that this provides that. It also balances, from our point of view, the need for low-income tenants, right, and the reality is that we do not have enough money in the city of Los Angeles.
Well, I have to say thank you to Ms. Marquez and her team. And I appreciate your courage and your willingness to speak extremely candidly and lay out the facts as they are and the market factors in which we have to deal in order to stimulate some sort of activity in the larger buildings, because, nobody's coming. And nobody's coming to preserve those units. And I think this is an excellent revision and changes that you've made that should allow us in these larger cases to hang on to affordable housing at a variety of income levels. I think we have a solid ordinance before us today. I think it's going to protect the housing and in some cases allow for it to be improved while maintaining it as affordable. And, I know that my colleagues here will continue, as I do, to aggressively pursue new projects. For the gentleman, I think, who was from SCAMP, if you've got a project out there and you're ready to roll, why don't you bring it forward and let's get started on it. We're not about talking, we're about doing. We've got 4 projects going on Central Avenue right now, 2 on Figueroa that are already done. So, we're ready to move very quickly. So I'm going to continue to pursue these projects at the affordable housing levels of 35% AMI and below. This ordinance, as you pointed out, does not prohibit anyone from developing a hotel solely for individuals living at 35% and below AMI. I believe, and your research has been really tremendous and also responsive. I think you have tried very hard to find that break point, the break point in subsidy, the break point in the market, the break point in what the advocates are asking for, and to find, where they all, meet that point of confluence to see what we will actually be able to achieve, and that will be borne out by what comes forward next by proposing that 10% of the units be at 35% and below AMI. Now, I can speak for downtown LA and the Council District 9 and not for the other districts, but in Council District 9 we have, and I hope that I think some of the lawyers in here hear this, we have approximately 718 units of housing at or below 35% AMI being built right now. It is important to note this because the hotels are not the only opportunity to build very affordable housing at 35% and below AMI. There are other ways to do this, and I would urge those, especially the gentleman here from SCAMP, I think, SCAMP, you take this back to your members and remind them of that there's a variety of ways that we can achieve the goal, and it's not just tied to, these large single-room occupancy hotels. I know that we've all been strong supporters of affordable housing and people living at low income levels, and we're going to continue to do so. In view of the recent shelter partnership report we received at our homeless ad hoc regarding the growing number of older adults 62 and over, 3,000 to 4,000 on any given night, I am clearly going to continue to develop more supportive housing for this population, and I hope that my colleagues share a similar view. In fact, as one who has the largest emergency homeless shelter in the city, and I welcomed it, teaming with individuals, not just from Council District 9, but from everywhere. I'm going to encourage the Housing Department to work with low-income housing developers to directly link homeless individuals from New Image to the housing we are building through the Permanent Supportive Housing NOFA process. I think it's important, and I urge and I thank the Housing Department and the CRA to find an effective way to assess who's currently living in the residential hotels. So our housing policy is consistent with those who are living in them and need housing the most. And just a small statistic that I wanted to put on the record because I think it's extremely telling. There's 330 residential hotels in LA that contain about 18,332 units. Breaking it down by council district, CD9, 42% of those units. CD14, 19% of those units. CD1, 14% of those units. CD15, 5% of those units. CD13, about 5% of those units. CD4, 4% of those units. CD10, 3% of those units. And one thing the list is missing is I know Mr. Cardenas has some SROs, and I'd like to make sure we get that added back in. But what this means is this is not a policy just for downtown. This is a policy for all of these council districts that have this type of housing in it. And it's my hope that it stimulates economic activity so that we can get these 18,000 plus units renovated, expanded, rehabbed, and throughout the entire city to the benefit of the people who are living in all the council districts I named, including our friends out in the San Fernando Valley. So with that, I hope we can get an aye vote here today and get the support that we need so that we can move on.
Okay, Mr. Reyes.
One good question. This assertion of it being a floor and not a ceiling, and the dynamics you spoke to in terms of break-even points, when you all whittle it down, the folks who spoke today, are they going to find themselves homeless? Are we going to have units for them? Are we going to be able to create a process where folks who are in those units, as you said, we have, I'm not sure if you said 1 for 1, but that's the way I interpret it. What's going to happen?
Again, the focus of the ordinance is preservation. So the force of the ordinance is aimed at keeping the buildings preserved as they are. So we believe that that is what it will largely attain. The issue, the other, is just an exemption if you're going to do an affordable housing deal, which means a 55-year covenant on affordability, right? Even for those, all of the relocation fees that you all approved last year all apply. And it is only a minimum. It is not a ceiling.
Right.
Okay.
So the fact that it's a minimum, a floor, anyone who wants to do more than that, it will be voluntary.
Absolutely.
But we would have to create the incentives to enhance.
I don't think it's an issue of incentives. I think it's an issue that every building is different. They have different construction types. They have all kinds of different issues. When you take a look at the building, it will tell you what it will take to preserve it. And what I'm here having to honestly tell you is that every building is different, and that is the art of preservation and rehab.
And what you're saying is that if we went from 10% to 30%, we would be on the border of inducing this notion of a taking.
That's right.
Because now we're enforcing a requirement that could take away that person's rights to do what they want with their property.
Well, what you would ultimately be doing is ensuring that no building could become affordable and have a covenant, because you would be making it impossible to make the financing work. And I think there is a value, I believe, from everything I know, you believe there is a value in preserving those units long-term. Remember, right now they're privately held and could be turned over in the market at any time. What we're saying is that we value 55 years of affordability where the rents are absolutely solid and we all know what we're getting. So it only permits the exemption when you're going to get a legally affordable building that is covenanted for 55 years.
Thank you, Mr. Reyes. President Garcetti.
Knowing that that council is starting as we speak, I had 9 points or questions. I'm going to try to do them in 3 minutes. So let me try to boil this down real quick. First of all, I'm pleased to see what we have mostly before us, and that we're really talking now about a narrow but important piece of it. And I don't want folks who may be tuning in for the first time, 80-85% there's agreement on, and that is substantive and good and will result. It's a reflection of the hard work of a lot of people in this audience, and I know what it's like to campaign for that last 10 or 15%, but nevertheless, I wanted to put that forward. I want to thank you for putting the council appeal forward, and also as a bit of an insurance policy, that was something that was very important to us, so that on individual case-to-case basis, now you do have political process for advocates to be able to come directly to council on those appeals and those exemptions. So I thank you for putting that in, and I think that's critical for us, for me, certainly having peace of mind on a case-by-case basis. Thank you also for making sure, and just to confirm, CRA can get its Wiggins credit through LAHD, because that's very important to us from a legal perspective. And the changes to tax credit law or MHP regulations right now, I think is very critical, because a couple things in here said the only reason we have to do it this way in the recommendation is because of the restrictions that are there. I don't think we need to accept as policymakers, and certainly having former Speaker of the Assembly here, another Assembly member used to be in charge of the Budget Committee, who's in Sacramento today lobbying, we have an ability to go up there and to say, if the state of California cares about homelessness, we need to change the prejudice towards, and I understand it from a economy of scale perspective, but large 3-4 bedroom units against the single and couple oriented serving units. And I think that's a big piece that could resolve some of these issues outright, so that we have a better route forward for that. My main question, two questions, is what is the worry of not having this at all? Why is this better than the status quo of having some exemption? Is it a legal argument that we have to, that you're making argument, or what if we what hypothetically, if nothing was there at all for an exemption, what would be the negative effect? Why should we as council members, because I think we hear the ethical impulse, I'm sure you feel it as well, we'd love to have as many units as Perry would, but why would you make the case to us as policymakers that we couldn't do that?
I guess I would speak to those city council members yet to be elected. This is an ordinance. It can be changed. So while this council may want to do a very aggressive pro-tenant preservation ordinance, another council could come back and completely change it. By allowing an exemption only for 100% affordable buildings, what you are doing is extending your commitment by ensuring that those units would be set aside for 55 years under law. That is a very different situation, because
So that's in place even if the ordinance changes?
no matter what happens, those are secured. And if we don't do that, these remain in private hands. This ordinance is about how you're containing and playing with the
But if we
private
did the rest of
market.
the ordinance without the exemption, is what I'm saying. If we did the rest of the ordinance without the exemption, sure, it remains in private hands, but they're handcuffed in terms of what they can
Exactly.
do with it. Is there a legal issue there, or
I
is
think
it?
we become more vulnerable, because in San Francisco, when it went, there had to be a way. There had to be a way out in order to do it. And we have tried, within the context of LA's market and LA's geography, to give you something that is as strong as San Francisco, but is LA-based.
Okay, well, in the interest of time, Mr. Chair, I will be as upfront as everybody else has been in this too. I'm comfortable voting to move this forward today, but between now and council, I need to do a little bit more digging in that point specifically. And I don't think anybody's proposing that there be no exemption. The advocates have said a higher level, and I understand the economics of that. I understand that some people can do that. I understand it also becomes less competitive because there's only a couple organizations that do that, and I've heard that point made as well. But I need to hear the case of why that's even better. Having any exemption is better than the status quo. And I assume somebody is going to make the case to me that the hotels as they are not necessarily better conditions than what they could be, but I need to hear that argument a little bit more.
Well, that's certainly true, Kevin.
Thank you, Mr. President. Ms. Barclay, at this point in time, it will be the recommendation of this committee that we approve the CLA report, send this to the full council. Is there any other business before this committee?
No, sir.
This committee is adjourned, so let it be written, so let it be done. Thank everybody for coming.
I'd like to remind everybody we need a new mayor of Los Angeles, so if
Zuma dog, Zuma dog. Zuma dog, Zuma dog, chill, brother.
I don't know. You submitted a card?
Because they didn't go too long.
25
Yeah.
Didn't fit them.